Since ancient times, some stories in the Bible have carried deep secrets about destinies shaped by God. The tribe of Levi is one of those stories. But did you know that Levi, the third son of Jacob and Leah, had a beginning marked by fury and vengeance? How then did his descendants become the chosen ones to serve in God's temple? What happened for the Levites, who once stained their hands with blood to be set apart for the sacred priesthood? The answer is hidden in a surprising path of correction, obedience, and divine purpose. What seemed like an uncertain future for this tribe transformed into a unique mission among all the 12 tribes of Israel. Get ready, because in this video, we will uncover how God transforms stories and calls to himself those whom many would never expect. The story of the tribe of Levi began long before they became servants of the Lord. Everything started with a despised woman and a man divided between two wives. Leah, the first wife of Jacob, never felt truly loved by him. His heart always belonged to Rachel, Leah's younger sister, for whom he worked 7 years to be able to marry. But due to a scheme by his father-in-law, Laban, Jacob ended up marrying Leah first. From that moment on, she lived in the hope of winning her husband's love, but he remained devoted only to Rachel. Leah had 2 sons, Reuben and Simeon, but that did not change Jacob's feelings. He continued to love only Rachel. When Leah became pregnant for the 3rd time and gave birth to another boy, she named him Levi, which means attached or united. She believed that now Jacob would become closer to her. Genesis 29 and 34. Deep down, the name Levi carried her hope. Perhaps this time my husband will truly love me. But nothing changed. Jacob remained distant, and Leah continued to suffer for not receiving the love she longed for. Levi grew up in a family full of conflicts and rivalries. Jacob's sons were always competing, and their mothers, Leah and Rachel, fought for their husband's attention. Leah believed that with each son she bore, she could win Jacob's heart, while Rachel, who took a long time to have children, felt jealous of her sister. This turbulent environment marked Levi's childhood. He and his older brothers, Reuben and Simeon, learned from an early age that nothing came easy. If they wanted something, they had to fight for it. Levi always had a strong and impulsive temperament. While some of his brothers were more peaceful, he could not ignore injustices. If something wrong happened, he reacted immediately, without thinking much about the consequences. This behavior would define his life and that of his descendants forever. Over time, Levi grew up alongside his brothers and became a strong and courageous man, but also hot-tempered. He did not tolerate disrespect, and whenever he saw his family threatened, his fury became evident. However, it was a tragic event that awakened an uncontrollable rage in him and Simeon, changing their destinies forever. Dinah, the only sister among the sons of Jacob, was young and curious. One day, she decided to go out and meet the women of the city of Shechem, where a Canaanite people lived. But what should have been a simple outing turned into a nightmare. The prince of the city, named Shechem, son of Hamor, saw her and, overcome with desire, dishonored Dinah and then tried to take her as his wife. The news soon reached Jacob's ears, but he chose to wait for his sons to return from the fields before making any decisions. However, Levi and Simeon had no such patience. When they heard what had happened to their sister, rage consumed them like an uncontrollable fire. To Levi, this was not just an offense against Dinah, but an insult to the entire family. Hamor, the father of Shechem, tried to resolve the situation. He went to Jacob and his sons with a proposal. He wanted Dinah to marry Shechem, and for the two peoples to unite through marriages between Israelites and Shechemites. To make the deal more advantageous, Hamor promised land and riches. Shechem, in turn, claimed that he loved Dinah and would do anything to be with her. But Levi and Simeon did not believe any of these promises. To them, this was nothing more than an attempt to cover up the shame their sister had suffered. They did not want an agreement. They wanted revenge. So the two brothers devised a plan. They told Hamor and Shechem that they would accept the union of the peoples, but with one condition: all the men of the city had to be circumcised, just like the Israelites. Hamor and Shechem accepted without suspecting anything. They returned to the city and convinced the men to undergo the ritual, assuring them that this would bring great benefits and alliances. Thus, all agreed and were circumcised without imagining what would come next. 3 days later, when the Shechemites were still weak and in pain from the circumcision, Levi and Simeon attacked. With swords in their hands, they invaded the city and killed all the men, leaving no one alive. It was a massacre. After that, the two brothers plundered the entire city. They took women, children, animals, and riches, destroying everything in their path. In the end, they rescued Dinah and brought her back home. If Levi and Simeon expected Jacob to be proud of what they had done, they were completely mistaken. He was furious. He knew that after that massacre, the other peoples might unite to avenge Shechem. Moreover, he realized that his sons were consumed by the desire for revenge and did not think about the consequences. "You have brought trouble upon me. Now all the peoples around us will turn against us. We will be destroyed." Genesis 34 and 30. But Levi and Simeon felt no remorse. To them, they had simply done justice. However, that cruel act would come at a price. The years passed. The sons of Jacob grew up, formed their own families, and became leaders of great tribes. Jacob, now elderly, felt that his life was coming to an end. So he gathered his sons for an important moment. He would bless them and declare the future of each one. One by one, Jacob spoke prophetic words over his descendants. But when it was Levi and Simeon's turn, his expression changed. His tone became serious, and instead of a blessing, his words were of rebuke and judgment. "Simeon and Levi are brothers. Their swords are weapons of violence. Let me not enter their counsel, for in their anger they killed men, and in their cruelty they destroyed lives. Cursed be their fury, so fierce. Cursed be their wrath, so cruel. I will scatter them throughout Israel without their own territory." Genesis 49, 5 and 7. The words fell like a blow. It was a harsh but fair punishment. Jacob had not forgotten what they had done in Shechem. Now, their thirst for vengeance would have consequences. While the other brothers would inherit lands and territories, the tribes of Levi and Simeon would be dispersed, without a fixed place to call their own. For the tribe of Simeon, the consequence was losing strength over time until it was absorbed by Judah. But the fate of the tribe of Levi would be very different. The years passed, and the descendants of Jacob became a great people. However, they lived as slaves in Egypt, suffering under the oppression of the pharaohs. It was in this context that among the descendants of Levi, a boy was born who would change everything: Moses. Chosen by God, Moses was the leader who freed Israel from slavery and guided them toward the Promised Land. With this, the tribe of Levi, which had once been marked by the fury of its ancestors, began to follow a new path. Even though they were freed from Egypt through great miracles, the Israelites still struggled to fully trust in God. They walked toward the Promised Land, but remained trapped in fear and insecurity. It was in this atmosphere of impatience that one of the saddest and most decisive episodes in Israel's history took place: the worship of the golden calf. Moses had gone up Mount Sinai to receive the tablets of the law directly from God. But since he took a long time to return, the people began to doubt whether he would come back. Anxiety and fear took over, and soon they pressured Aaron, Moses' brother, to create a new god to lead them. "Get up and make us a god to lead us. As for this Moses who brought us out of Egypt, we do not know what happened to him." Exodus 32, 1. Aaron gave in to the pressure of the people. He asked them to hand over their gold jewelry, most likely the treasures they had taken from the Egyptians before their escape, and melted everything down to create a golden calf. Then he presented the image to the people and said, "Here is your God, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt." Exodus 32, 4. It was a shameful scene. The same people who had witnessed the miracles in Egypt and the crossing of the Red Sea were now bowing before an idol made by human hands. What began as a simple celebration soon turned into an uncontrolled feast, full of dancing, shouting, and behaviors that mixed idolatry with immorality. Meanwhile, Moses was at the top of the mountain, speaking with God. The Lord, seeing the rebellion of the people, spoke with indignation, "Go down immediately. Your people, whom you brought out of Egypt, have corrupted themselves." Exodus 32:7. Moses hurried down, carrying the tablets of the law written by the very hand of God. But upon reaching the camp and seeing with his own eyes the idolatry of the people, he was furious. In an act of indignation, he threw the tablets to the ground, breaking them at the foot of the mountain as a symbol that the people had broken their covenant with God. Then he took drastic action. He took the golden calf, burned it in the fire, ground it into powder and mixed it with water, forcing the people to drink it. But that was still not enough. The sin was too serious, and firm action was needed to correct the situation. Then Moses raised his voice and made a call to all the people, "Whoever is on the Lord's side, come to me." Exodus 32:26. The camp fell into silence. Many stood paralyzed, unsure of what to do, but one group gathered courage and stood up, the Levites. They were the only ones to respond to God's call at that decisive moment. The error had to be corrected, and Moses gave a difficult but necessary command. The Levites were to execute God's justice, eliminating those who had completely given themselves over to idolatry and refused to repent. It was a harsh moment, but essential to restore holiness among the people of Israel. Because of this act of obedience and faithfulness, God set apart the tribe of Levi for a special mission. They would be responsible for the sacred service and the preservation of the covenant with the Lord. Today you have consecrated yourselves to the Lord, for you have been faithful to him, even against your own relatives. Therefore, God has granted you a blessing. Exodus 32:29. The anger that once brought a curse was now transformed into zeal for the holiness of God. The Levites were chosen to serve directly before the Lord, becoming priests and assisting in worship. Unlike the other tribes, they did not receive land as an inheritance. However, they received something even greater, the privilege of always being in the presence of God. The Levites will have no land as an inheritance among the children of Israel, because the Lord is their inheritance. Deuteronomy 10:9. After proving their faithfulness to God in the episode of the golden calf, the Levites received a special calling. They would not be just another tribe, but the ones who would ensure that true worship was preserved in Israel. The Lord said to Moses, "Call the tribe of Levi and present them to Aaron, the priest. They must help him by fulfilling his responsibilities and assisting the entire community in the service of the tabernacle." Numbers 3, 5, and 7. Since God freed Israel from Egypt, his desire was to be close to his people. But how could a holy God dwell among sinful human beings? For this, a special place was needed where his presence could manifest and where the people could approach him in the correct way. That was when God commanded the construction of the tabernacle, a richly decorated tent that would serve as his mobile sanctuary in the wilderness. And the tribe of Levi was chosen to take care of this sacred place. No other Israelite was allowed to touch the sacred objects or enter the tabernacle without permission, as this meant the risk of death. But the Levites were set apart for this mission and received detailed instructions on how to dismantle, carry, and set up the tabernacle whenever the people moved through the desert. Within the tribe of Levi, the descendants of Aaron, Moses' brother, were chosen to be priests. Only they could offer sacrifices on the altar, enter the holy place, and intercede for the people before God. Aaron and his sons established the priestly lineage of Israel, and only their descendants could perform this function in future generations. The other Levites, who were not from Aaron's family, also had an important role. They assisted in worship, sang, cared for the sacred objects, organized the tabernacle, and carried out various essential duties to ensure that the worship of God was done in the correct way. If you enjoyed this teaching, share it so that more people may be blessed. Write in the comments if you already knew the story of the Levites and leave your like on the video. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel for more content like this. May God bless you.